Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Big cybersecurity meeting coming up. Or maybe just trying to stay ahead of the curve in this crazy digital world.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're like me and just can't resist digging into fascinating topics. Well, either way, you are in the right place. Because today we are diving headfirst into the World Economic Forum's Global Cybersecurity Outlook 2024 report.
We're going to break down exactly what's happening in global cybersecurity right now, explore all the biggest challenges, and we'll really connect the dots on why this matters for you because trust me, it does no matter what you do or where you work.
All right, let's unpack this thing. Right off the bat, one stat really jumped out at me. The cybersecurity economy is growing 4 times faster than the global economy as a whole this year. I mean, it's insane. What's even fueling that kind of explosive growth?
It is pretty mind-blowing, but you know what's fascinating? It's that the growth is undeniable, but it's not happening equally everywhere. The report's actually pointing to a growing cybersecurity poverty line. It's kind of a scary thought.
A poverty line. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What exactly does that mean in the context of cybersecurity?
Imagine trying to compete in a race where some runners have like the latest high-tech gear while you're stuck with these outdated shoes and no water.
Oh, wow.
That's what this cybersecurity poverty line kind of feels like for a lot of organizations today. Some are thriving in this cybersecurity boom. They're pouring resources into their defenses.
Right.
Others are barely scraping by, lacking the tools and the expertise and the budget to really, truly protect themselves.
Yeah.
And the middle ground, those just meeting the bare minimum standards, it's vanishing fast.
Wow. Okay, I see where this is going. So it's like a digital divide, but for cybersecurity.
Exactly.
If that gap keeps widening, what happens to the global digital ecosystem as a whole? I mean, can it even function if some players are that far behind?
Yeah, it creates this incredibly fragile system where even if you're doing everything right, you're only as strong as the weakest link in your supply chain or partner network.
Makes total sense.
And the report really drives home the point that cyber attacks can kind of ripple outwards and hit everyone, even those with strong defenses.
So the report highlights that small and medium businesses, SMEs, are particularly vulnerable. They're more than twice as likely as large organizations to be missing that essential cyber resilience. Why is that?
Well, think about it. Smaller organizations often don't even have the budget for sophisticated security tools or to hire top-tier talent.
Right.
Larger companies, even if they're struggling with a lot of outdated technology, have a bit more wiggle room. There's a stark example in the report. Only 25% of small organizations have cyber insurance compared to 75% of large ones.
Wow.
And on top of that, insurance costs are skyrocketing.
Okay, that is a huge difference. It sounds like we're setting up a system where only the biggest players can truly afford to protect themselves. Which begs the question, should those big companies be doing more to help smaller ones get up to speed? What are the potential consequences if they don't?
That's a crucial question, and the report definitely suggests that more collaboration is needed. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's in everyone's best interest to raise that overall cybersecurity baseline. A rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Right. Okay, shifting gears a bit, we can't talk about the future of cybersecurity without talking about AI. I mean, it's changing everything, including how we approach security.
Yeah.
What are the opportunities and dangers we need to be aware of?
AI has the potential to be a game changer, both for good and bad.
Okay.
On one hand, it can help automate tasks, analyze massive amounts of data, and identify threats way faster than humans ever could.
Right.
But the report also reveals a pretty unsettling statistic. Fewer than 1 in 10 experts believe that AI will give defenders the upper hand over attackers in the next 2 years.
Wow, less than 1 in 10. Why is there so much pessimism around AI and cybersecurity?
The biggest concern is that AI makes it easier for attackers to launch really sophisticated attacks. We're talking about highly convincing phishing attacks, superpowered malware, and disinformation campaigns that spread like wildfire. And these aren't just like hypothetical threats, right?
Right.
Their report specifically points to the potential for AI-generated deepfakes to disrupt upcoming elections, undermine trust in democracy, and even cause global instability.
Yeah, I've read about those deepfakes. They're getting incredibly realistic.
Yeah.
And it's pretty terrifying to think how they could be used. I mean, we have 45+ elections happening globally in the next year. That's a lot of opportunity for bad actors to exploit.
Yeah.
So AI is clearly a double-edged sword. What steps can organizations take to use it responsibly for cybersecurity without falling prey to its potential dangers?
That's the million-dollar question. Organizations need to be proactive, and this means investing in AI-specific security measures, developing strategies to detect AI-powered attacks, and being incredibly cautious about the data that they use to train their AI systems. Biased or inaccurate data can lead to some seriously flawed security outcomes.
So it's not just about adopting the technology, but it's about understanding its limitations and potential pitfalls. And for individuals, what should we be watching out for? How can we protect ourselves from these AI-powered threats?
Be skeptical. Be hyper aware of the potential for AI-generated scams and disinformation campaigns. Think twice before clicking on suspicious links or opening attachments or trusting anything that seems too good to be true online. AI is making it harder than ever to tell what's real and what's not.
That's sobering but good advice.
Mm.
Now, we've talked about the cybersecurity skills shortage a few times. Can we dive into that a bit more? How does that tie into this whole cyber inequity issue we're discussing?
That's a great transition because the skills gap is actually a huge driver of cyber inequity. The demand for skilled cybersecurity professionals is so far outpacing the supply, and the report shows that this gap is only getting wider, not better.
Just how bad is it? Paint a picture for us.
It's grim. The report states that half of all small organizations simply don't have the skilled people they need to meet their cybersecurity objectives. And get this, only 15% of all organizations believe that the skills gap will improve in the next 2 years.
So we're talking about a critical shortage that's likely to get worse before it gets better. What are organizations even doing to try and cope with this? Are they just throwing their hands up in despair?
Not exactly. The report found that many are turning inwards, relying heavily on upskilling their existing employees, 41%, and paying for external training programs, 91%. Finding experienced professionals is so difficult that they're basically trying to create their own talent pipeline.
So they're trying to make their own cybersecurity heroes. Is that enough, though? What about exploring alternative paths into cybersecurity careers, like apprenticeships or those micro-credentials we've heard so much about? Could that be part of the solution?
It definitely could be, but the report points to kind of a missed opportunity here. Only a tiny percentage of organizations are taking advantage of these alternative pathways.
Okay, so far we've painted a pretty sobering picture of the cybersecurity landscape. Is there any good news? Any glimmers of hope amidst all these challenges?
Don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. The report does highlight some positive trends.
Okay, good.
One of the biggest is that cybersecurity is finally being recognized as a business risk, not just a tech issue. Cyber and business leaders are finally getting on the same page, and that's a huge step in the right direction.
That's a relief to hear.
Yeah.
What else is giving you hope? What else is moving in the right direction?
Um, More organizations are integrating cyber resilience into their overall risk management strategies. That's critical. And while there's still a long way to go, regulations are slowly but surely improving. We're seeing a push for more consistency across countries, which will help to create a more level playing field for businesses.
I like the sound of that. Any specific examples that really illustrate this shift towards a more proactive and resilient approach to cybersecurity?
Absolutely. One that stands out is the growing push for secure by design.
Okay.
The idea is to shift the burden of security from consumers to the companies creating the technology. Imagine a world where security is baked into products from the ground up rather than being an afterthought. That's the goal.
That sounds like a win for everyone.
Hmm.
But realistically, how do we get there? How do we make secure by design the norm, not the exception?
It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Market forces, regulatory pressure, and a real shift in mindset within the tech industry itself. Consumers are becoming more aware of security risks and demanding products that protect their data and privacy. That's putting pressure on companies to prioritize security.
So consumer demand is a powerful driver of change. What about the role of regulations? Can they help to move the needle on secure by design?
They can be incredibly effective. The report points to emerging regulations like the European Union's Cyber Resilience Act as a big step forward. These regulations set clear security standards for tech products and require companies to be more transparent about vulnerabilities. Essentially, they're raising the bar for what's considered acceptable.
So regulations are setting a higher standard, consumers are demanding more, and some companies are starting to see the business value of building secure products. It sounds like things are starting to move in the right direction, even if there's still a long way to go. But before we dive deeper into the solutions, let's take a step back and really connect this to the listener. We've laid out the problem, the challenges, the risks, but what does this all mean for the average person navigating this increasingly complex digital world?
It means that we're all stakeholders in this fight for a more secure digital future. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, it's an everyone issue. And the choices we make, both individually and collectively, have real consequences.
That's a powerful message. We're not just passive bystanders, we're all active participants in this digital ecosystem, and our actions matter. But with so much information flying around, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. What can individuals, even those who aren't tech experts, actually do to contribute to this collective effort? Give us some concrete steps we can take to make a difference.
First and foremost, stay informed. This deep dive is a great starting point, but don't stop here. Keep up with the latest cybersecurity news and trends. Knowledge is power, especially in this rapidly changing landscape.
Okay, knowledge is power. Got it. What else? What practical steps can we take to protect ourselves?
Practice good digital hygiene. Use strong passwords. Enable multi-factor authentication wherever possible, and be wary of suspicious links or attachments. These simple things make a big difference.
Those are great tips. Any others?
Absolutely. Be an advocate for cybersecurity in your own organization, even if you don't work in IT. Talk to your colleagues about the importance of security awareness and encourage your company to invest in cybersecurity training and resources.
So it's about creating a culture of security from the top down.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned earlier that the middle ground of organizations, those just meeting the minimum security standards, is shrinking rapidly. What are the consequences of that trend? What happens if that group disappears entirely?
That's a scenario we really want to avoid. It creates an even more volatile and unpredictable digital ecosystem. Imagine a single successful attack on a vulnerable organization triggering a domino effect, potentially taking down critical infrastructure, disrupting supply chains, and causing widespread financial chaos.
It's like one vulnerability leading to another and another until the whole system starts to crumble. Not a pretty picture. So what needs to happen to prevent that kind of worst-case scenario? What are the solutions? What can we do to build a more resilient digital world?
The report emphasizes a multi-pronged approach. We need stronger regulations to establish minimum security standards and hold organizations accountable. We need more investment in cybersecurity education and training to address the skills gap. And perhaps most importantly, we need increased collaboration and information sharing between the public and private sectors. This isn't a problem any one entity can solve alone.
So it's not just about building walls, it's about building bridges and working together. But what about regulations? I know some people view them as burdensome, especially for smaller businesses that might not have the resources to comply. How do we make sure regulations are effective without stifling innovation or creating unnecessary hurdles?
That's a valid concern, and the report acknowledges the need for balanced and effective regulations. The goal shouldn't be to punish, it should be to empower. Regulations should focus on establishing clear, achievable security baselines while providing incentives and support for organizations to meet those standards.
So regulations that are more like guardrails than roadblocks. I like that analogy. They're there to guide us, not to hold us back. Now, we've talked about the role of big companies in helping smaller ones get up to speed. But what about governments? What role should they play in addressing cyber inequity?
Governments have a critical role to play in several key areas. First, they can provide funding and resources for cybersecurity research and development, helping to drive innovation and create new solutions. They can also establish national cybersecurity strategies and frameworks, setting clear guidelines and expectations for organizations to follow.
So they're setting the tone, providing a roadmap, and helping to drive progress. Makes sense. Anything else?
Definitely. Governments can also play a key role in fostering international cooperation on cybersecurity issues. This includes sharing threat intelligence, coordinating responses to major attacks, and working together to develop international norms and standards for responsible behavior in cyberspace. Cyber attacks don't respect national boundaries, so our defenses can't either.
That's a great point. We need to be thinking globally and working together to address these shared threats. But are there any concrete examples of how this kind of collaboration is actually happening? What does successful partnership look like in the real world?
There are some really inspiring examples of public-private partnerships out there that are making a real difference. One is the Cybersecurity Tech Accord, a global alliance of over 200 tech companies committed to defending against malicious cyber activity and protecting users.
200 companies, that's a pretty impressive coalition. What are some of the specific things they're doing to achieve their goals?
They're sharing threat intelligence, improving vulnerability disclosure processes, and developing best practices for that secure by design concept we discussed earlier. This kind of collaborative approach is essential for staying ahead of the constantly evolving threat landscape.
So strength in numbers, what other examples do the report highlight?
Another interesting example is the World Economic Forum's own Center for Cybersecurity. They're bringing together leaders from government, business, and civil society to develop global solutions for cybersecurity challenges.
And that brings us full circle back to this report. It sounds like they're at the forefront of this fight against cyber inequity.
They're definitely playing a vital role in shaping the conversation and driving real-world action. And that's what it's all about, moving from awareness to action.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of secure by design from a few different angles, but I want to push back a bit here. How realistic is it to expect tech companies to truly prioritize security from the get-go? Isn't the pressure to innovate and release new products quickly always going to conflict with building in robust security?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The report acknowledges that balancing speed and security is a constant challenge. But it also makes a strong argument that secure by design isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a necessity in today's world.
So how do we get there? How do we make secure by design the norm, not the exception? What are the levers we can pull to drive this change?
It's going to require a perfect storm of market forces, regulatory pressure, and a genuine shift in mindset within the tech industry. Consumers are becoming more aware of security risks and demanding products that protect their data and privacy. That's putting pressure on companies to prioritize security, and that pressure is only going to grow.
So consumer demand is a powerful force. What about regulations? Can they help to push the needle on this issue?
Absolutely. The report points to emerging regulations like the European Union's Cyber Resilience Act as a positive step. This act requires tech companies to meet specific security standards for their products and to be more transparent about vulnerabilities. It's about holding companies accountable and setting a higher bar for what's considered acceptable.
So regulations are creating a more level playing field and pushing the industry towards better security practices. But what about the tech companies themselves? Are they starting to embrace this secure by design philosophy? Are they recognizing that building secure products is not just good for their users, but good for business?
We are seeing signs of progress. Some companies are shifting their approach, starting to prioritize security from the very beginning of the development process, rather than treating it as an afterthought. They're realizing that security can be a competitive advantage, not a burden.
So it's about aligning security with business goals, making it a core part of their DNA rather than a separate silo. That makes a lot of sense. Now, we've covered a ton of ground here, but I'm curious about your take on one final question before we wrap up this part of the deep dive. Looking ahead to the next few years, what are the biggest cybersecurity trends you're watching? What should our listeners be paying attention to as they navigate this ever-evolving digital world?
That's a great question. The next few years are going to be a critical turning point for cybersecurity. We're facing this convergence of emerging technologies, geopolitical tensions, and the growing cyber inequity we've been discussing. It all adds up to a highly volatile and uncertain landscape.
So buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Perhaps. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are also incredible opportunities for positive change. One trend I'm watching closely is the rise of cyber insurance. As the costs of cyber attacks continue to skyrocket, more and more organizations are looking to insurance to mitigate their financial risk.
So cyber insurance is becoming an increasingly important piece of the puzzle. But what are some of the challenges for organizations looking into cyber insurance? What do they need to be aware of as they navigate this complex and evolving market?
The cyber insurance market is still in its early stages, and there's a lot of variation in terms of coverage and premiums. Organizations need to be diligent, carefully assessing their own risks, understanding the terms and conditions of their policies, and working closely with their insurers to develop effective cyber risk management strategies. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So it's about being proactive and informed, not just relying on insurance as a safety net. What other trends are on your radar? What else should we be paying attention to as we think about the future of cybersecurity?
Another trend I'm watching is the growing focus on zero trust security. Think of it like a VIP area at a concert.
Why?
Just because you have a ticket to the concert doesn't mean you automatically get into the VIP section. You need additional credentials and constant checks to make sure you belong there.
Okay, I like that analogy. So zero trust is about assuming that no user or device can be trusted by default and requiring continuous verification and authentication. But why is this approach becoming so popular? Why this shift towards this more stringent security model?
Because the old ways of doing things just aren't cutting it anymore. With the increasing sophistication of cyber attacks and the proliferation of devices and cloud services, traditional perimeter-based security models are no longer sufficient. Zero trust is about shifting from a trust but verify approach to a never trust, always verify model.
So it's about building security in from the ground up, assuming the threats can come from anywhere, both inside and outside the organization.
Exactly. Zero trust is not just about technology, it's about changing the way we think about security. It's a cultural shift that requires organizations to be more proactive and vigilant in their approach to protecting their data and systems.
That makes a lot of sense. Any other trends you're keeping a close eye on?
One more I'd highlight is the increasing importance of cyber resilience. This is about going beyond just preventing attacks. It's about being able to withstand and recover from them quickly and effectively. Think of your organization as a ship sailing through stormy seas. Cyber resilience is about making sure your ship is strong enough to withstand the waves, has a skilled crew to navigate the challenges, and a plan in place to get back on course if things go wrong.
I love that analogy. So it's not just about building walls, it's about building a ship that can weather any storm. Cyber resilience is about building organizations that are adaptable, flexible, and can bounce back from adversity. It's about having the people, processes, and technology in place to navigate the inevitable challenges of the digital world.
You nailed it. It's about being prepared for anything and having the resilience to come out stronger on the other side. And I think this is where the convergence of trends we've been talking about comes into play. The organizations that can successfully navigate these challenges and embrace these new approaches to cybersecurity are the ones that will thrive in the years to come.
That's a great point. And it brings us back to that core message of cyber inequity. The organizations that are already struggling to keep up are going to face even greater challenges as the threat landscape continues to evolve at an alarming pace.
That's right. And this is why it's so important for everyone to be part of the solution. We need to close the gap between the cyber haves and have-nots if we want to create a more secure and resilient digital world for everyone.
So this is a call to action for all our listeners. Whether you're a tech expert, a business leader, or just an everyday user, you have a role to play in shaping a more secure and equitable digital future. We'll be back in a moment to discuss what that role might look like for each of you.
Absolutely. It's not about, pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and finding ways to support each other.
I love that. We're all in this together. But I have to admit, after hearing about all these threats and challenges, it's easy to feel a little overwhelmed. Like, what can one person really do to make a difference in the face of such massive, complex problems?
I get it. It can feel daunting, but I truly believe that even small actions can have like a ripple effect. Think of it this way. If everyone listening to this deep dive took just one step to improve their own cybersecurity or to advocate for stronger security practices in their workplace or community, the collective impact would be enormous.
Okay, that makes me feel a bit better. So let's talk specifics. What are some tangible things our listeners can do starting today to be part of the solution? I'm ready to take notes.
All right, I'm happy to share some ideas. First, let's revisit that concept of digital hygiene. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly important. Think of it like washing your hands, a basic habit that can prevent the spread of germs. In the digital world, good hygiene means using strong, unique passwords for all your accounts, enabling multi-factor authentication whenever possible, being cautious about what you click on and download, and keeping your software up to date.
Those are great reminders. It's easy to get complacent with security, especially when we're busy and juggling a million things. But these small habits can really add up to a stronger defense.
Exactly. It's about making security a part of your daily routine, not just something you think about when there's a big news story about a data breach. And it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting everyone you're connected to, your family, your friends, your colleagues.
That's a good point. We often forget how interconnected we all are online and how our individual actions can impact others. So beyond practicing good digital hygiene, what else can we do to contribute to a more secure digital world?
Be an advocate for change. Don't be afraid to speak up about cybersecurity, even if you don't consider yourself like a tech expert. Talk to your friends and family about the importance of online safety. Encourage your workplace to invest in cybersecurity training and resources, even if it's just a lunch and learn session to raise awareness.
I love that. It's about being a champion for cybersecurity in your own sphere of influence, no matter how big or small. We can all be part of shifting the culture towards greater awareness and proactive action. Now, you mentioned earlier that governments have a critical role to play in addressing cyber inequity. Can we dive into that a bit more? What specific actions can governments take to help level the playing field and create a more resilient digital ecosystem?
Absolutely. Governments have a lot of power to shape the cybersecurity landscape, and the report highlights several key areas where they can make a real difference. First and foremost, they can provide funding and resources for cybersecurity research and development. This is about supporting innovation and creating the next generation of cybersecurity tools and technologies that can help us stay ahead of the curve.
So investing in the future of cybersecurity.
Mm.
Makes sense. What else?
Governments can also establish national cybersecurity strategies and frameworks. This is about setting clear guidelines and expectations for organizations to follow, helping to create a more consistent and unified approach to cybersecurity across different sectors and industries.
So providing a roadmap and a set of shared goals for everyone to work towards, it sounds like that could help reduce some of the confusion and complexity that exists in the cybersecurity landscape today. Anything else?
Definitely. One of the most critical roles governments can play is in fostering international cooperation on cybersecurity issues. This is about recognizing that cyber threats don't respect borders and that we need a coordinated global response to effectively combat them.
So breaking down silos and working together across borders to share information, coordinate responses, and develop international norms and standards for responsible behavior in cyberspace.
Exactly. It's about creating a more collaborative and unified front against cyber threats, rather than each country trying to go it alone.
Now, earlier in this deep dive, you shared some really inspiring examples of public-private partnerships that are making a difference in the fight for a more secure digital world. Can we talk about those a bit more? What are some of the key ingredients that make these partnerships successful?
Yeah, I'm happy to dive deeper into that. One of the most crucial ingredients is trust. It takes time and effort to build trust between organizations, especially when they come from different sectors with different priorities and perspectives. But without trust, collaboration is impossible.
Trust is the foundation of any successful relationship, and that's especially true in the cybersecurity world where sensitive information and critical infrastructure are at stake. But building trust is just the first step. What else is needed to make these public-private partnerships truly effective?
Clear goals and shared objectives are essential. Partners need to be on the same page about what they're trying to achieve and how they're going to measure success. Without a shared understanding of the mission, it's easy to get sidetracked or to work at cross purposes.
So alignment is key. Everyone rowing in the same direction towards a common goal. What else?
Open and transparent communication is critical. Partners need to be willing to share information freely, even when it's not always positive or flattering. They need to be able to have honest conversations about challenges and setbacks and to work together to find solutions.
That's a great point. Honesty and transparency are essential for building trust and ensuring that everyone is working with the same information. But communication is just one piece of the puzzle. What else is needed to make these partnerships successful in the long run?
Flexibility and adaptability are crucial. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving, so partnerships need to be able to adapt and adjust their strategies and approaches as needed. This requires a willingness to experiment, to learn from mistakes, and to constantly iterate and improve.
So it's about embracing a growth mindset, being open to change, and viewing challenges as opportunities for learning and improvement. I love that. But let's be realistic. These public-private partnerships sound great in theory, but in the real world, there are always going to be obstacles and challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles these partnerships face, and how can they overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges is simply getting everyone to the table. It can be difficult to coordinate schedules, manage competing priorities, and ensure that all the relevant stakeholders are represented.
That sounds familiar. Getting people to agree on a meeting time can be a challenge in itself, let alone trying to coordinate a complex multi-stakeholder partnership. So how do you overcome that hurdle? How do you get everyone in the same room, both literally and figuratively?
It takes strong leadership and a clear vision for the partnership. Someone needs to champion the cause, to articulate the value proposition, and to rally support from key decision makers. It's about building relationships, fostering a sense of shared purpose, and making it clear that everyone has a stake in the success of the partnership.
So it's about finding that charismatic leader who can inspire and motivate others to work together towards a common goal. But leadership alone isn't enough, right? What else is needed to overcome the logistical and bureaucratic hurdles that can derail these partnerships?
Clear communication channels and efficient processes are essential. This means establishing clear roles and responsibilities, setting up regular meetings and check-ins, and using technology to streamline communication and collaboration.
So taking a proactive and organized approach to project management, ensuring that everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and that information flows freely between partners, that makes a lot of sense. But even with strong leadership, clear goals, and efficient processes, these partnerships are still going to face challenges. What are some of the other common pitfalls that can undermine their effectiveness, and how can they be avoided?
One common pitfall is a lack of follow-through. It's easy to get excited about a new partnership, to have like a really productive kickoff meeting and to make ambitious plans. But without consistent effort and follow-through, those plans can quickly fizzle out.
So it's about turning those great ideas into concrete actions and holding each other accountable for making progress. But how do you maintain that momentum over time? How do you prevent these partnerships from becoming just another talking shop?
Regular check-ins and progress reports are essential. This helps to keep everyone on track, to identify any roadblocks early on, and to celebrate successes along the way. It's about creating a culture of accountability and continuous improvement.
I love that. It's about making sure that the partnership is a living, breathing entity, not just a static agreement on paper. But even with regular check-ins and progress reports, there's always a risk that these partnerships can become bogged down in bureaucracy or that they lose sight of their original goals. How do you prevent that from happening? How do you keep the partnership focused and effective over the long term?
Periodically reviewing and reassessing the partnership's goals and strategies is crucial. This is about asking tough questions, being honest about what's working and what's not, and being willing to make adjustments as needed.
So it's about staying agile, being open to feedback, and not being afraid to course correct if things aren't going as planned.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked a lot about the what of public-private partnerships, what they are, why they're important, and how they can be successful. But I'm also curious about the why behind these partnerships. What motivates different organizations to come together and collaborate on cybersecurity, especially when they may have competing interests or priorities in other areas?
That's a great question. I think there are several factors at play. First, there's a growing recognition that cyber threats are simply too big and too complex for any one organization to handle alone. We need to pool our resources, share our expertise, and work together if we want to stand a chance against sophisticated cyber criminals and nation-state actors.
So it's a recognition of shared vulnerability and a shared responsibility for creating a more secure digital world. Exactly. We're all in the same boat, so to speak. But beyond that sense of shared responsibility, I think there's also a growing awareness of the potential benefits of collaboration. By working together, organizations can gain access to new technologies, share best practices, and learn from each other's experiences.
So it's not just about mitigating risks, it's about creating opportunities for innovation and growth.
Precisely. And I think that's a powerful message. When we come together and collaborate on cybersecurity, we're not just making the digital world safer, we're also creating a more dynamic and innovative ecosystem for everyone.
I love that. It's about creating a win-win situation where everyone benefits from a more collaborative and secure digital world. Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of public-private partnerships, but let's not forget about the individual. What role can each of us play in building a more resilient digital ecosystem, even if we don't work in tech or cybersecurity?
Every individual has a role to play, and those individual actions can add up to a powerful collective force. We've already talked about practicing good digital hygiene and advocating for stronger security practices in our workplaces and communities. But there's so much more we can do. We can educate ourselves about cybersecurity threats and best practices. We can support organizations that are working to improve cybersecurity. We can hold our elected officials accountable for making cybersecurity a priority. And we can simply talk about cybersecurity with our friends and family, helping to raise awareness and demystify the topic.
I love that. It's about empowering individuals to take ownership of their own cybersecurity and to become active participants in building a more secure digital future for everyone. Now, we've talked a lot about the challenges and the solutions, but I want to end this deep dive on a note of hope and optimism. Despite all the risks and uncertainties we face in the digital world, what gives you hope for the future of cybersecurity? What makes you believe that we can create a more secure and resilient digital world for ourselves and future generations?
What gives me hope is the incredible ingenuity and resilience of the human spirit. Time and time again, we've faced seemingly insurmountable challenges, and time again, we've found ways to overcome them. The cybersecurity landscape may be complex and ever-changing, but I have faith in our ability to adapt, to innovate, and to find solutions.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It's about recognizing that while the challenges are real, so is our capacity for innovation and collaboration. We're not powerless in the face of these threats. We have the power to shape our digital future and to create a world where technology empowers us, not endangers us. And I think that's a message worth sharing.
I couldn't agree more. It's easy to get caught up in the headlines, about data breaches and cyber attacks. But it's important to remember that there are also incredible people and organizations working tirelessly to make the digital world a safer place. And we can all be a part of that effort.
Exactly. And it's not just about being like a tech expert or working in cybersecurity. It's about being a responsible digital citizen, being aware of the risks and taking steps to protect ourselves and those around us. Okay, I'm feeling inspired. I'm ready to go out there and be a cybersecurity champion. But before I do, I want to tap into your expertise one last time. We've talked a lot about the big picture, but I'm curious about what this all means on a more personal level. Someone listening to this deep dive is thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but what does it have to do with me? What would you say to them? How can we connect these global cybersecurity challenges to our everyday lives and choices?
That's such an important question. It's easy to feel disconnected from these big, complex issues, especially when they seem so far removed from our daily routines. But the truth is, cybersecurity touches every aspect of our lives. I mean, think about it. We bank online, we shop online, we connect with friends and family online, we store our most precious memories and sensitive information online. Our entire lives are increasingly intertwined with the digital world.
It's true. We live so much of our lives online, it's easy to take it for granted. But you're right, the stakes are incredibly high. So how can we bring this home for our listeners? How can we help them see the connection between global cybersecurity challenges and their own personal digital lives?
Let's start with something we all do every day, using our smartphones. Think about all the information you have stored on that device. Your contacts, your emails, your photos, your financial information, maybe even your health records. Now imagine that information falling into the wrong hands.
Okay, that's a scary thought. Suddenly, cybersecurity feels a lot more personal.
Exactly. And it's not just about our personal information. Think about the apps you use every day. Social media, banking, shopping, dating, gaming. Each one of those apps is a potential entry point for cybercriminals. And if one of those apps is compromised, your personal data could be at risk.
So it's not just about protecting our devices, it's about being aware of the risks associated with the apps and services we use every day. What are some things our listeners can do to be more mindful of those risks and to protect themselves?
First and foremost, be selective about the apps you download and use. Do your research, read reviews, make sure the app comes from a reputable developer and that it has strong security features.
So it's about being a conscious consumer, just like we would with any other product or service. We wouldn't buy a car without checking its safety rating right. So why should we treat our apps any differently?
Exactly. And once you've downloaded an app, pay attention to the permissions it requests. Does it really need access to your location, your contacts, or your camera? If not, don't grant those permissions.
That's a great tip. It's easy to just click allow without thinking, but those permissions can have real consequences for our privacy and security. What else can we do to be more mindful of the apps we use?
Keep your apps updated.
Oh, right.
App developers regularly release updates that include security patches and bug fixes, so make sure you're running the latest version of all your apps.
Okay, so updates are important, just like they are for our computers. But let's face it, sometimes those updates can be annoying. They take time, they can disrupt our workflow, and sometimes they even introduce new bugs. Why are they so important from a security perspective?
Because cybercriminals are constantly looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. Those security updates are like patching holes in your digital armor. Without them, you're leaving yourself exposed to attack.
That's a powerful image. So updates aren't just about getting the latest features or bug fixes. They're about protecting ourselves from harm.
Exactly. Think of it as an investment in your own digital well-being. And speaking of investments, let's talk about something else that's often overlooked when it comes to personal cybersecurity: passwords.
The dreaded password. I think we can all agree that passwords are a pain. They're hard to remember, easy to forget, and they seem to get more complex and difficult to manage every year. But I know they're important. So tell us, what's the best way to approach passwords in today's digital world?
First and foremost, use a strong, unique password for each and every account you have. Don't reuse passwords. That's like using the same key for your house, your car, and your office. If someone gets a hold of that key, they have access to everything.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you even keep track of all those different passwords? Especially when they're all supposed to be long, complex, and completely different from each other. It seems impossible.
I hear ya. That's where a password manager comes in. A password manager is basically like a secure vault for all your passwords. It can generate strong, unique passwords for you, and it can store them securely so you don't have to remember them all.
So it's like having a digital bodyguard for your passwords. That sounds like a great solution. But are password managers really safe? I mean, if all your passwords are stored in one place, wouldn't that make them even more vulnerable to attack?
That's a common concern, but reputable password managers use strong encryption to protect your data. They're actually much safer than writing your passwords down on a sticky note or storing them in a text file on your computer.
Okay, that makes sense. So investing in a good password manager is a smart move for anyone who wants to improve their personal cybersecurity. But even with strong passwords and a password manager, we still need to be vigilant about other potential threats, right?
Absolutely. Phishing attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and it's getting harder and harder to tell the real from the fake. Be wary of any unsolicited emails, text messages, or phone calls that ask you for personal information or financial details.
So if you get an email from your bank asking you to verify your account information, don't click on the link, go directly to the bank's website, or call their customer service line to confirm the request.
Exactly. And if something just feels off or suspicious, trust your instincts. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
I love that. Trust your gut. It's often our best defense against scams and phishing attempts. Now, we've talked a lot about protecting ourselves online, but what about our offline lives? How does cybersecurity even impact the physical world? Is that even a thing?
It absolutely is a thing. Cybersecurity is no longer confined to the digital realm. It has real-world consequences that can impact our physical safety, our financial security, and even our critical infrastructure.
Okay, that sounds serious. Give us some examples. How can cyber attacks impact the physical world?
Think about our critical infrastructure. Power grids, transportation systems, hospitals, water treatment plants. These systems are increasingly reliant on technology, and a successful cyber attack could disrupt those systems, causing widespread chaos and even putting lives at risk.
So a cyber attack could literally turn off the lights, shut down transportation, or cripple our healthcare system.
It's a scary thought, but it's a real possibility. And it's not just about critical infrastructure. Cyber attacks can also target individuals, causing physical harm or financial ruin. Think about connected devices in our homes, smart locks, security cameras, even baby monitors. If those devices are hacked, criminals could gain access to our homes, steal our belongings, or even threaten our physical safety.
Whoa, that's terrifying. It's a reminder that cybersecurity isn't just about protecting data. It's about protecting our lives and our livelihoods.
Exactly. And as technology continues to advance and become more integrated into our lives, the potential consequences of cyber attacks are only going to grow. That's why it's so important to be aware of the risks, to take steps to protect ourselves, and to demand stronger security measures from the companies and organizations we trust with our data and our well-being.
That's a powerful message. It's a call to action for all of us to be more proactive and vigilant about cybersecurity, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of our communities, our countries, and the future of the digital world.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We all have a role to play in building a more secure and resilient digital future. And it starts with each of us taking ownership of our own cybersecurity and making it a priority in our lives.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners feel the same way. We've covered a lot of ground, but I think the key takeaway is that cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, it's a human issue. It's about people, it's about choices, and it's about working together to create a digital world that is safe, secure, and empowering for everyone.
I completely agree. And at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect. It's about being proactive. It's about taking those small steps every day to improve our own cybersecurity and to contribute to a more resilient digital ecosystem for all.
So well said. We want to thank you, our amazing expert, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us today. And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. We hope you've learned something new and that you're feeling inspired to take action. Remember, we're all in this together. Stay safe, stay secure, and keep exploring the amazing world of technology.